Your Honor, this woman can't even afford proper meals. These innocent children go to bed hungry because of her neglect. My ex-husband's lawyer stood in that courtroom, his manicured finger pointing at me like I was some kind of criminal. Each word felt like a physical blow. The judge leaned forward, his eyebrows drawn together in genuine concern, and I saw my whole world crashing down in that single expression. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of financial irresponsibility and neglect. Mr. Thornley continued, waving a folder thick with what I knew were doctored photos and manipulated bank statements. My client has documented empty refrigerators, bounced checks, and children wearing damaged clothing to school. These kids deserve better than a mother who prioritizes her own needs over theirs. I tried to speak. My mouth opened, but it felt like someone had filled my throat with cement. My public defender, Ms. Delane, was shuffling through papers frantically, clearly overwhelmed. Garrett sat across from me with that familiar smirk, the one he used to wear when he knew he'd won an argument by twisting my words against me. Furthermore, Mr. Thornley's voice boomed through the courtroom, we have testimony from neighbors who've seen these children searching through their backpacks for snacks because there was no breakfast at home. That was a lie, a complete fabrication. But how could I prove it? How could I explain that those neighbors were Garrett's golf buddies who'd never even been to my apartment? Judge Wendell turned to me. Mrs. Morrison, these are serious allegations. Do you have anything to say in your defense? My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the table. 7 years of marriage to Garrett had taught me that defending myself only made things worse. He had a gift for turning my words into weapons against me. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Rosalie and Colton. Your Honor, I work 2 jobs to provide for my children. Every penny goes to their care. These allegations are excuses, Garrett interrupted, even though his lawyer tried to quiet him. She's always making excuses. Our kids need stability, not a mother who's never home. That's when I heard it. A small voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. Your Honor, may I say something? Everyone in the courtroom turned. There was my 9-year-old daughter, Rosalie, standing in the 3rd row of the gallery. She wore the purple dress I'd bought her for her school concert last spring, the one she said made her feel brave. Her little brother Colton sat beside her, his hands folded in his lap, wearing his favorite dinosaur tie that he insisted made him look like a lawyer on TV. Young lady, please sit down. This is a legal proceeding, the bailiff said, though his voice was gentle. Rosalie didn't sit. Instead, she held up a shoebox, the one she'd decorated with glitter and magazine cutouts for her 4th grade memory project. Your Honor, my name is Rosalie Morrison. That's my mom over there, and I have something really important you need to see. Judge Wendell raised his hand to stop the bailiff from moving toward her. What's in the box, Rosalie? She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was clear and strong. Receipts, Your Honor. The ones Daddy told me to hide from Mommy's lawyer. He said if I kept them secret and told everyone Mommy doesn't feed us, he'd buy me a new iPad and take us to Disney World. The courtroom went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Garrett's face had gone from smug to sheet white in a matter of seconds. That's ridiculous. Garrett shot up from his chair, his expensive suit suddenly looking like armor that couldn't protect him. She's making things up. Kids have wild imaginations. Bethany obviously coached her to... Mr. Morrison, Judge Wendell's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You'll remain silent unless addressed directly. Continue, young lady. Rosalie walked forward, each step deliberate and confident. This was my daughter, the girl who still slept with a nightlight, who asked me to check for monsters under her bed, standing up in a courtroom full of adults who'd been deciding her fate without her input. Daddy came to our house when Mommy was at work, she began, opening the box. He took food from our freezer in our pantry. He threw it in the dumpster behind our building. I know because I followed him and took pictures with the phone Grandma Vera gave me before she died. She pulled out a small stack of photos, slightly blurry but clear enough to show Garrett carrying garbage bags from our apartment building to the dumpster, clear enough to show him throwing away unopened packages of chicken, vegetables, boxes of cereal, and gallons of milk. Rosalie, Judge Wendell spoke gently but firmly, why didn't you tell anyone about this before? My daughter's composure cracked just slightly, and I saw tears gathering in her eyes. Because Daddy said if I told anyone, the judge would be angry and send me and Colton to different foster homes. He said we'd never see Mommy or each other again. But yesterday, my teacher, Mrs. Brennan, taught us about truth and justice in social studies. She said sometimes being scared is okay, but letting lies hurt people you love is never okay. Colton suddenly stood up too, his 7-year-old frame trying to look tall. I helped collect the receipts. Rosalie said we were being detectives for truth. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath as Rosalie continued pulling items from her decorated shoebox, each one another nail in the coffin of Garrett's carefully constructed lies. 6 months ago, my life was completely different. I was Bethany Morrison, working double shifts as a cardiac nurse at Mercy General Hospital, while raising 2 beautiful children. Every morning started the same way. Rosalie would shuffle into the kitchen with her hair sticking up in 12 different directions, asking if she could have pancakes for breakfast even though she knew it was a Wednesday, and Wednesdays meant cereal and toast. Colton would already be at the table, carefully arranging his dinosaur figures in what he called breakfast formation, making sure each one had a good view of his cereal bowl. Our apartment wasn't much to look at from the outside. Second floor of a building that had seen better days, with windows that rattled when the wind picked up and radiators that clanged like ghost drummers in the winter. But inside those walls, we'd built something special. Rosalie's science projects covered every available surface of the living room. Her latest creation, a volcano made from paper mache and too much enthusiasm, sat proudly on the coffee table even though it had already erupted 3 times and left baking soda stains on the carpet. Colton's Lego cities sprawled across his bedroom floor in elaborate configurations that he'd mapped out on graph paper, complete with street names and building specifications. "Mom, did you know that the human heart beats about 100,000 times per day?" Rosalie had announced one evening while I was helping her with homework. "That means your heart at work is super busy helping other hearts keep working." "That's pretty amazing, sweet pea," I'd replied, though my own heart felt like it had been working overtime just trying to keep our little family afloat. The divorce from Garrett had been finalized exactly 3 months earlier. March 15th, a date I'd circled on the calendar with black marker, not in celebration, but as a reminder that I'd survived. He'd left us for Sienna, his 24-year-old personal trainer, who posted motivational quotes on Instagram about living your truth and following your destiny. Apparently, Garrett's destiny involved abandoning his family for someone who thought protein shakes were a food group. "I need a fresh start," he'd announced one January evening, his suitcase already packed by the door. "This isn't working anymore, Beth. We both know it." What I knew was that this meant our family, and isn't working meant he'd found someone younger who laughed at his jokes about cryptocurrency and didn't remind him to attend parent-teacher conferences. The truth was, I felt relief when he left. The last 2 years of our marriage had been like walking through a minefield in the dark. Every word I said could trigger an explosion. If dinner was 5 minutes late, I was disorganized and setting a bad example for the kids. If I asked him to pick up milk on his way home, I was nagging and trying to control him. When I worked extra shifts to pay for Rosalie's science camp, I was choosing work over family. When I took a day off to attend Colton's school play, I was financially irresponsible. But then, 2 months after the divorce was finalized, everything changed. Garrett's parents, Walter and Vera Morrison, passed away in a car accident. They'd been returning from their 50th anniversary celebration in wine country when a drunk driver crossed the median. The tragedy was devastating, but what came next was worse. Their will contained a clause that Garrett had apparently known about all along. Their substantial estate, including 3 rental properties and a portfolio worth over $2 million, would only pass to him if he had primary custody of any grandchildren. Without custody, everything would go to various charities they'd supported over the years. Suddenly, the man who'd forgotten Colton's 7th birthday and had missed 12 of Rosalie's soccer games was Father of the Year. He started showing up for his visitation weekends with presents and promises. He enrolled them in expensive summer camps without consulting me, then used my failure to provide enrichment opportunities as evidence of neglect. "Mommy, why does Daddy keep taking pictures of our apartment?" Colton had asked one Sunday evening after returning from Garrett's house. "What kind of pictures, buddy?" "Everything. Our fridge, our cabinets, my closet, Rosalie's closet. He even took pictures of the bathroom medicine cabinet. He said he was playing a game. Rosalie had chimed in from where she was doing homework. He asked me if I was happy here. When I said yes, he looked angry and said I must not understand what happiness really means. That should have been my wake-up call, but I was drowning in exhaustion, pulling extra shifts to pay for Ms. Delane, the only lawyer I could afford, and she was juggling so many cases that our conversations lasted 5 minutes at most. My family couldn't help much from a distance. My parents lived in Oregon, where Dad was recovering from hip surgery. My brother Nolan was in Maine, dealing with his own custody battle after his ex-wife relocated there with his son. I was fighting this battle alone, armed with nothing but the truth and the hope that justice actually meant something in family court. The custody hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning at 9 o'clock sharp. I'd requested the day off from work 3 weeks in advance, which meant losing not just my base pay, but also the overtime I desperately needed to keep up with bills. My supervisor, Nancy, had given me that look of pity I'd grown to hate, the one that said, "You poor thing," without offering any actual help. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, wearing my only suit, a navy blue outfit I'd bought 5 years ago for job interviews. The hem had been mended twice, and if you looked closely, you could see where Colton had accidentally gotten marker on the sleeve, but it was professional enough. Ms. Delane met me on the courthouse steps, her arms full of folders and her phone buzzing constantly. "Bethany, I need to be honest with you," she said, barely looking up from her papers. "Thornley is going to come at you hard. He's got a reputation for destroying mothers in custody cases. Just answer honestly and keep your responses short." Inside the courtroom, Garrett was already seated with his legal team. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, his hair freshly cut, looking every inch the successful businessman he pretended to be. Sienna sat behind him in the gallery, her hand resting on her pregnant belly in a gesture so deliberately maternal it made me sick. Mr. Thornley stood up first, his presence commanding the room like a shark circling prey. "Your Honor, we're here today because my client, Mr. Garrett Morrison, has serious concerns about the welfare of his children while in their mother's custody." He opened a leather folder and began his assault. "Mrs. Morrison, you work as a cardiac nurse, correct?" "Yes, I do." "And how many hours did you work last week?" I knew where this was going. 62 hours. 62 hours, he repeated slowly, as if the number itself was criminal. "And during those 62 hours, who watched your children?" "They were in school during my day shifts. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, watched them for the 3 evening shifts." "Mrs. Chen, who is 73 years old and uses a walker." "She's perfectly capable of watching them. She raised 4 children of her own." Thornley pulled out a photograph. "This is your refrigerator, taken this past Monday. Can you explain why it appears nearly empty?" My stomach turned. Garrett had arrived 3 hours early for pickup that day, using his key that he'd somehow copied before returning it. "That photo was taken before my grocery delivery arrived. I shop online and have groceries delivered Monday afternoons." "How convenient that you have no proof of this supposed delivery," Thornley smirked. "Your bank records show multiple overdraft fees in the past 3 months. How can you claim to provide adequately for your children when you can't manage your own finances?" "Those overdrafts happened because Garrett stopped paying child support for 2 months without warning, and my automatic bills still processed." "Mr. Morrison has provided documentation that he paid support directly to the children in the form of clothes and school supplies." "Without my knowledge or consent, and those items never appeared," I shot back, my voice rising despite Miss Delane's warning touch on my arm. Thornley produced more photos. "These images show your daughter Rosalie wearing shoes with visible holes, your son Colton in a jacket that's clearly too small. Is this how you define adequate care?" "Rosalie refuses to wear new shoes because she's attached to those. They're her lucky science fair shoes. I bought her 3 new pairs. Colton's jacket is his favorite because it has dinosaur patches his grandmother sewed on before she passed." "Convenient excuses," Thornley said, turning to the judge. "Your Honor, We have here a mother who leaves her children with elderly, infirm caregivers, who can't maintain food in the home, who can't manage basic finances, and who allows her children to attend school in damaged clothing. Meanwhile, my client has remarried, has a stable home with separate bedrooms for each child, a full-time homemaker wife ready to care for them, and the financial means to provide everything they need and more. Judge Wendell looked at me over his glasses. Mrs. Morrison, do you have bank statements showing these grocery deliveries you mentioned? Ms. Delane fumbled through her papers. Your Honor, we weren't aware this would be brought up. We can provide them after today's hearing. That seems rather late, the judge noted, concern creeping into his voice. Thornley moved in for what he clearly thought was the kill. Your Honor, we also have evidence that Mrs. Morrison has been taking prescription medication that could impair her ability to parent. That's insulin, I practically shouted. I'm diabetic. It's insulin. A condition she failed to disclose in initial custody paperwork, Thornley countered smoothly. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every word I said was being twisted, every explanation dismissed. I could see my children slipping away with each accusation, each carefully orchestrated lie. Garrett sat there with that satisfied smile, the same one he'd worn the night he told me no judge would give custody to an overworked, underpaid nurse over a successful businessman with a stay-at-home wife. Judge Wendell's frown deepened as he reviewed the documents in front of him. Mrs. Morrison, these are serious concerns about your children's welfare. Before I make any decisions, I need to understand the full picture of your household situation. My throat felt like sandpaper. Every defense I could think of sounded weak against Thornley's polished accusations. That's when I heard the small voice from the gallery, clear and determined. Excuse me, Your Honor. I need to show you something important. Everyone turned to see Rosalie standing in the third row, holding her decorated shoebox against her chest like armor. Colton stood beside her, his small hand gripping his sister's sleeve. They weren't supposed to be here. I'd arranged for them to stay with Mrs. Chen during the hearing, but somehow they'd found their way to the courthouse. Young lady, please sit down, the bailiff said, moving toward them. Children aren't permitted to interrupt proceedings. But I have evidence, Rosalie said, her voice growing stronger. Real evidence about what my dad's been doing. He told me to hide these receipts, and I know that's wrong. Judge Wendell raised his hand to stop the bailiff. Wait a moment. Young lady, what's your name? Rosalie Morrison, Your Honor. I'm 9 years old, and this is my brother, Colton. He's 7. That's our mom over there, and she's telling the truth about everything. Garrett jumped up from his seat, his face flushing red. Your Honor, this is highly inappropriate. These children shouldn't even be here. They're obviously being coached. Mr. Morrison, sit down immediately, Judge Wendell commanded. His attention returned to Rosalie. What receipts are you talking about? Rosalie walked forward, her sparkly shoes squeaking on the polished floor. She stopped directly in front of the judge's bench and opened her shoebox. Your Honor, my dad came to our apartment when Mom was at work. He threw away our food and took pictures to make it look like Mom doesn't feed us, but I kept all the receipts from when Mom bought groceries. She pulled out a handful of receipts, holding them up. This one is from last Monday. Mom spent $247 on groceries. She always shops after her Sunday night shift because the store is less crowded and she can use digital coupons that refresh on Sunday nights. Dad took those pictures Monday morning before she unpacked everything from her car. That's a lie, Garrett shouted. Bethany obviously put her up to this. I have proof you're lying, Dad, Rosalie said, turning to face him. Her voice wavered but didn't break. Remember when you told me to download that game on my tablet? You didn't know it had a screen recorder running in the background. It recorded everything you said when you were at our house. She pulled out a small tablet from the box. You made me promise not to tell anyone you were throwing our food away. You said if I helped you, we could live in a big house with a pool. But if I didn't help, Mom would go to jail and Colton and I would be separated forever. Colton suddenly spoke up, his young voice cutting through the tension. He made me lie too. He told me to tell my teacher I was hungry, but Mom always makes us breakfast. Always. Even when she worked all night, she makes us French toast sticks we can heat up ourselves. Miss Delane finally found her voice. Your Honor, we'd like to submit these items as evidence and request they be properly reviewed. Judge Wendell nodded slowly. Rosalie, bring the box here, please. As Rosalie approached the bench, she continued pulling out items. Here's the receipt for my new shoes. 3 pairs, just like Mom said, but I told her I only wanted to wear my lucky ones because I won my science fair in them. Here's the receipt for Colton's inhaler, the one Mom bought instead of getting her own medicine because insurance would only cover 1 prescription that month. She pulled out a small notebook covered in unicorn stickers. I wrote down all the times Dad came over when Mom wasn't home. January 18th, he put water in the milk to make it look spoiled. February 3rd, he took batteries out of the smoke detector and told us to tell the social worker about it. February 22nd, he practiced with us what to say in court, but everything he wanted us to say was a lie. Your Honor, Thornley interjected, his composure finally cracking. These are children. They can't possibly understand the complexities of what they're saying. This is clearly parental alienation. Mr. Thornley, Judge Wendell's voice was ice cold. I've been doing this for over 2 decades. I know the difference between a coached child and one who's been carrying the weight of adult deception. Please continue, Rosalie. Rosalie reached into the box one more time, pulling out a folded piece of paper. This is the letter I wrote to Grandma Vera before she died. I told her everything Dad was doing because I was scared. She wrote back and told me to be brave and tell the truth when the time was right. She said the truth always finds a way to shine through darkness. She handed the letter to the judge. The time is right now, Your Honor. My mom works hard to take care of us. She reads to us every night, even when her voice is tired. She helps with homework, even when she hasn't slept. She never misses our important stuff, and she never, ever lets us go hungry. My dad is lying about everything because he wants money from Grandma and Grandpa's will. He told his girlfriend Sienna that once he gets custody, he'll send us to boarding school anyway. The courtroom had fallen completely silent except for the sound of Garrett's heavy breathing and the scratch of Judge Wendell's pen as he took notes. There's one more thing, Your Honor, Rosalie said, reaching into the very bottom of her shoebox. She pulled out a small digital recorder, the silver one her grandmother had given her for her 8th birthday. Grandma Vera gave me this before she passed away. She said to use it if I ever needed to remember something important. She pressed the play button, and Garrett's voice filled the courtroom, crystal clear and undeniable. Listen, Princess, when the judge asks you questions, you need to tell him you're hungry at Mommy's house, okay? Even if it's not true. It's like playing pretend, the same way you pretend to be a scientist. Rosalie's recorded voice responded, But lying is wrong, Daddy. You always said lying is wrong. This is different, sweetheart. Sometimes adults need to bend the truth to make things better. If you help Daddy, I'll buy you that microscope you wanted, the professional one that costs $800, and we'll go to Disney World, just the 3 of us. What about Mom? Mommy will be fine. She just needs to learn that Daddy knows what's best for you and Colton. Now let's practice again. What do you say when they ask about food? That I'm hungry at Mom's house. Rosalie's voice sounded small and uncertain on the recording. Perfect. And what about your clothes? That Mom doesn't buy us new things. Excellent. Remember, if you don't help Daddy with this, I might have to move to California with Sienna. Her family has business there. You'd never see me again, and you know how sad that would make Colton. The recording continued for another 30 seconds, each word another nail in Garrett's case. His voice coached both children on specific phrases to use, threats carefully woven between promises, manipulation disguised as parental concern. Judge Wendell's face had transformed from concern to controlled fury. Mr. Morrison, do you deny that's your voice on this recording? Garrett's lawyer, Thornley, tried to interject. Your Honor, we'd need to verify the authenticity of this recording. It could easily be fabricated or edited. Then let's hear more, the judge said coldly. Rosalie clicked to another recording. This time, it was a conversation between Garrett and Sienna, apparently unaware that Rosalie was in the back seat of the car, presumably asleep. How much longer do we have to play this game? Sienna's voice asked. Just until the custody hearing. Once I get the kids, we get the inheritance. $2 million, babe. We can send them to that boarding school in Switzerland my parents always talked about. We'll see them on holidays, maybe summer breaks if we're not traveling. And Bethany won't fight it? She can't afford to. I've made sure of that. Called her employer last month, suggested they might want to drug test her. She had to take unpaid leave for the screening. I maxed out our old joint credit card right before the divorce finalized. Her credit is destroyed. She can barely afford that public defender, let alone a real lawyer. You're brilliant, Sienna laughed, though I still don't understand why your parents put that custody clause in their will. They were old-fashioned, thought family money should stay with family blood, and that meant the grandkids needed to be under the Morrison roof. They never imagined I'd divorce Bethany. Colton suddenly ran forward with his notebook, tears streaming down his face. Your Honor, I wrote everything down too. Look. He opened his notebook to reveal pages of careful, childish handwriting. February 10th. Daddy put dish soap in the washing machine and blamed Mom. February 15th. Daddy told me if I didn't say Mom was mean, he'd take away my dinosaur collection forever. February 20th. Daddy made us practice crying for the social worker. These are lies, Garrett exploded, standing up so fast his chair fell backward. Your Honor, my ex-wife has clearly spent weeks coaching these children. This is parental alienation at its worst. Mr. Morrison, control yourself or you'll be held in contempt, Judge Wendell warned. He turned to the children. Rosalie, Colton, did your mother tell you to say any of this? No, Your Honor, Rosalie said firmly. Mom doesn't even know we collected all this evidence. She always tells us to be respectful to Dad, even when we tell her about the mean things he says. She says divorce is between adults, and we should love both our parents. She didn't even know we were coming today, Colton added. Mrs. Chen helped us take the bus here. She said it was time for truth to have its day. Judge Wendell looked at the elderly woman sitting in the back of the gallery, who nodded solemnly. Your Honor, Ms. Delane stood up, finding her strength at last. I move for immediate dismissal of Mr. Morrison's custody petition and request full custody be awarded to my client with supervised visitation only for Mr. Morrison pending a full investigation. I'm inclined to agree, Judge Wendell said, his voice heavy with disgust. Mr. Morrison, what I've witnessed today is one of the most egregious cases of custodial interference and child manipulation I've encountered in 23 years on this bench. You've attempted to use your own children as weapons against their mother, bribing them, threatening them, and teaching them to lie to officers of the court. He looked at me then, and his expression softened. Mrs. Morrison, I apologize for what you've endured today. It's clear you've been the victim of a calculated campaign designed to separate you from your children for financial gain. Your children's bravery in coming forward with the truth speaks volumes about the values you've instilled in them despite these terrible circumstances. Turning back to Garrett, his voice became steel again. Mr. Morrison, I'm granting full custody to Mrs. Morrison effective immediately. You'll have supervised visitation only, pending a full investigation by Child Protective Services. You're ordered to pay all court costs, Mrs. Morrison's legal fees, and 3 months of back child support immediately. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges, including fraud, witness tampering, and custodial interference. The gavel came down with a finality that seemed to echo through my bones. 6 weeks have passed since that day in court, and our small apartment feels different now. Not bigger or fancier, but lighter somehow, like someone opened all the windows and let years of held breath finally escape. Rosalie's science projects still cover every surface, but now she works on them while humming, not with the quiet intensity of a child carrying secrets. Colton's Lego cities have expanded into the hallway, complete with a new courthouse where truth always wins, according to the sign he made from cardboard. Garrett is facing criminal charges for custodial interference, fraud, and witness tampering. His assets were frozen pending investigation, which means Sienna left him 2 weeks after the hearing. She posted on Instagram about removing toxic people from your journey and choosing self-love over complicated situations. I almost felt sorry for him until I remembered how he'd tried to steal our children for money. The real surprise came from Garrett's extended family. His sister Claire, whom he'd told me wanted nothing to do with us after the divorce, called me crying. Bethany, I had no idea. He told us you wouldn't let him see the kids. We believed him. She's been visiting every Sunday, teaching Rosalie advanced chemistry experiments and bringing Colton books about paleontology. His cousin Marcus, a lawyer himself, offered to help me recoup the financial damages from Garrett's sabotage. Family isn't about blood, he said. It's about truth and loyalty. You and the kids are our family. Walter and Vera's estate executor contacted me last week. Apparently, there was a secondary clause in their will that Garrett hadn't known about. If he was found to be an unfit parent through legal proceedings, the grandchildren's education trusts would activate immediately, managed by an independent trustee until they turn 25. Rosalie's science camp is paid for through graduate school. Colton's future is secure. Vera had apparently suspected her son's true nature and planned accordingly. "Mom, are you mad at us for keeping secrets?" Rosalie asked me one evening as I tucked her into bed, still wearing those sparkly shoes she refuses to throw away. "Never, sweet pea. You were protecting our family the only way you knew how, but you shouldn't have had to be that brave." "I'm glad I was," she said simply. Mrs. Brennan was right in social studies. Sometimes the truth needs a voice, even if it's a small one. "When did you become so wise?" "When I realized Dad was making you cry but pretending you weren't. You always stood up for us, Mom. It was our turn to stand up for you." Colton joined us, dragging his dinosaur blanket. "Mom, will Dad ever say sorry?" "I don't know, buddy. Sometimes people get so lost in their own lies they forget what truth looks like." "That's sad," he said, crawling into bed next to his sister. "But we won't forget, right?" "Never," I promised them both. My brother Nolan flew in from Maine after hearing about everything. He helped me refinance the apartment into my name only and set up a proper budget. "You should have called me," he said for the 100th time. "You didn't have to face this alone." "I thought being strong meant handling everything myself," I admitted. "That's what Garrett wanted you to think. Isolation is how manipulators win. They make you believe your voice doesn't matter, that no one will believe you, that you're overreacting or being dramatic. They count on your silence." He was right. For years, I'd been drowning in Garrett's version of reality, where every struggle was my fault, every problem was my failure. I'd forgotten that truth doesn't need to be loud or aggressive. Sometimes it comes in a shoebox carried by a 9-year-old girl in sparkly shoes. Ms. Delane took on my case pro bono after the hearing and has become a friend. She's using our case in her law school guest lectures about recognizing custodial interference. "Your children saved not just you," she told me, "but potentially dozens of other families facing similar manipulation." Last week, I finally filled my prescription for the medication I'd been skipping to afford Colton's inhaler. Standing in that pharmacy, I realized I'd been holding my breath for 7 years, maybe longer. The marriage, the divorce, the custody battle. I'd survived it all by making myself smaller, quieter, less visible. But my children had shown me that truth doesn't require permission to exist. The shoebox sits on our mantle now, redecorated by both kids with photos of our real family. Not the one Garrett tried to destroy, but the one we've built from love, trust, and courage. Colton added a label in his careful handwriting, "The box that saved us." But it wasn't really the box. It was 2 children who understood that love means protecting the people who protect you. It was an elderly neighbor who knew when justice needed a helping hand. It was a grandmother who left her grandchildren more than money. She left them the tools to recognize and fight against manipulation. Truth doesn't always win immediately. Sometimes it has to wait, gathering receipts in a shoebox, building courage in small voices. But when it finally speaks, when someone brave enough finally gives it a platform, truth doesn't just win, it liberates. Our story isn't unique. There are thousands of parents, mostly mothers, fighting against fabricated evidence and calculated lies in family courts every day. They're told they're too poor, too busy, too imperfect to deserve their children. They're isolated, exhausted, and made to doubt their own reality. If you're one of them, remember this: truth has a voice. Sometimes it's yours, sometimes it's unexpected allies, sometimes it's even your children's. Don't give up. Document everything. Trust that lies, no matter how well crafted, eventually crumble under the weight of their own deception. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice comes wrapped in glitter and carried in the small hands of someone who loves you enough to be brave when you can't be. If this story resonated with you, if you've faced similar battles or know someone who has, please share this video. Your story matters and you're not alone. Like this video, if you believe truth deserves to win, leave a comment with your own experiences or words of support for others fighting these battles. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage, justice, and the unexpected heroes who change everything.